I went to a 2-week course. This is the National Safety Council's Advanced Safety. This is the Morte, which is that management oversight and risk tree. What you do is you set up and you assign each one of these little trees in here to a system, and then you go through this whole thing and identify whether it was part of the problem or not part of the problem, or whether it was benign or whatever the case is. Are you going to do this on a slip, trip, and fall?
No.
Probably not. And the other problem with this is that you're going to have to spend a lot of time doing this. And you have to train people on how to do this, okay? So I'll go ahead and I'll pass that around so you guys can kind of see that. And then that other one that's mentioned up there, which is called the PET, it's not quite as complex, but it is. So again, this is one that we filled out, and this was a confined space situation. And you can see where we color-coded it. If it was colored green, it wasn't a problem. If it was blue, it was kind of benign, didn't really have a part in it. If it was done in red, then, go ahead, oh. Let me put it right side up for you guys. You know, when I'm up here, it looks good. Okay. So you can see where the different colors and things like that. So the problem with this is that you have to send people through training. You would have to be a little bit more detailed about things. And you're only going to use this on really complex situations. And so for most companies, you're not going to go to that particular depth. What you will do, however, is you'll probably use what they call the 5 whys. Now, what's great about the 5 whys is it gets you to drill down. So you identify a contributing cause, maybe the condition, maybe the action, maybe a deficiency in the system, but you look at that contributing cause and then you ask 5 times, why? Now, 5's an arbitrary number, to be honest with you. Sometimes you can do this in 3. Sometimes you need 7 to do this. But you keep asking why, and when you get down to the bottom, that's going to be a root cause. That's going to identify something in your system. So, for instance, somebody slipped outside. Well, why'd they slip? Well, we had snow on the ground. Why was there snow on the ground? Well, if the maintenance crew doesn't make it in, who takes over for them? You know? So you can keep asking whys until you can get to that situation in which you identify where there's a problem in your process or your procedure or something like that that is considered a root cause. Now, the only problem with doing the 5 whys is what? It's a single, no, not the why, because you're doing it, you're not interviewing. You can ask why, it's not the interview, but the thing is you're back to a single event. Okay, it's a funnel. Because you got all these things up here you can ask questions on, you have to take one and run it through the funnel to ask the 5 whys. So you're back to identifying a single root cause. That's not what we want. We want a multiple cause. We want to use a causal analysis. An analysis means what? It's not a test, is it? And it doesn't mean one. That's the thing about an analysis. An analysis means that you make an in-depth look to determine where you're at. So in this process, you're looking at multiple systems and you're trying to make it easy, simple and easy to understand, but you're going to identify more than one cause. So you're going to take a look at all those contributing causes that you have questions on, and you're going to run each one of them through a 5 why. And that's going to help you at the end of this come up with a list of root causes that you need to address. We want to look at the multiple causes that led to this. If you only identify one thing, your chances of hitting the one thing that caused this is pretty nil, because usually it's a conglomeration of all the actions and all the conditions and all the things that took place that's going to lead to this to happen. Remember, when we talked about the holes theory, all your programs, all your processes and everything have holes in them, and what's going to happen is that when all those holes lined up, that's when the accident happens. Well, that's what we're talking about. So if you only identify one deficiency, you're really not removing the other problems out of the sequence. So you really want to take a look at all of this. Okay, so you're exactly right in your thinking. You can also use a fishbone to kind of help clarify for yourself. So as you identify things that the employee's actions, the equipment that they were working with, the environment that they were dealing with, and then of course looking at those management things. These things being here at the end, being the things that you want, are getting to be more systematic and things like that. But the employee's actions can also be considered part of the system, because they are a component of the system, right? So you're really looking at the system overall, and this helps you focus in on that. So once you get done and you've identified what your root causes are, now you're going to write your report, you're going to put it in a documentation, you're going to identify your findings, those things that were in your sequence, you're going to identify your root causes, those are those things that you want to address, you're going to attach your recommended action to that, and you want to put all your supporting documentation in there so that you can show how you arrived at this, okay? Now, once you get all this done, keep in mind, this is pretty easy from a guy that does the investigation part, right? I don't hold the purse strings. So my recommendations can be pretty lofty at times. There are more than one way to fix a problem, okay? So I did an inspection one time, and there's a company had these large ovens. They were probably about 15 feet tall, and they have people that have to go on top of these ovens. And, you know, they don't have fall protection. So you have to have fall protection. So ideally, what we wanted to see them do was put up guardrails, right? And they said, well, we can't fix it for 2 years. We don't have the money to do that. I said, well, you can't just leave it open. What are we going to do? Well, we already fixed that issue. We're going to put a tie line across the top, and then when people go up, they're going to have fall protection on, you know, the harness. They're going to have their lanyard. When they go up, click. Now they have fall protection. You fixed the problem. Now, is it the permanent fix we wanted? Not yet. Well, it's fixed, you know. Now, are there going to be some possible issues off of that? Yeah, now you're going to have to inspect the harnesses, and now you've got some other things that have to happen. But until they can afford to put the actual guardrails up there, they fix the problem. So keep in mind that, you know, from your standpoint, don't zero in on one thing. Maybe even offer a couple recommended actions, some intermediate stuff that you can do to abate those problems, okay? And again, follow up to make sure that you fixed it. Because when put those corrective actions in, now maybe some knothead thinks, well, you know, I can just hook that lanyard up to my belt instead of putting on the harness, okay? Well, now he's kind of following through with this, but he's kind of not, isn't he? So that's one of the things that you want to do is follow up, make sure the procedures are being worked the way that you expected them to be done, and they're not creating more of a hazard, okay? And of course, the other thing in this is that if you stop just with each individual incident, you're really missing a bigger opportunity to put these things together. And I think somebody was asking that question, of John, have you done an analysis? Have you broke this down? Have you taken a look at, you know, who exactly is committing fraud and things? John didn't want to do that. But from this standpoint, if you're looking at incidences, there might be some commonalities here that you didn't identify in that accident sequence, but now that you're doing a trend analysis, you know, when are we having the most injuries? The afternoon? Towards the end of the day? Who's involved in those incidents? What's their experience rate? And this is where you start identifying, you know when people are most likely to being involved in an injury? Their first 6 months on the job. You know, the next group is those people that have been doing their job for 15 to 20, 25 years. Why them? Complacency. It's the complacency thing, because as you work with, the more you work with something, your perspective or your perspective on it, what happens to the hazards with that particular task? Oh, I've been doing this for years. They downplay those hazards because they deal with them all the time. Their familiarity with those hazards, they become everyday common things, so now the focus has changed. They don't see them as much as hazards like they did when they first started. So you can kind of see how that happens. But that's where that trend analysis helps you identify those more specific issues.